And we're live. Welcome back to the Loopcast. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm joined by Erica and Josh today. As always, we're live here on YouTube, 11 a.m., Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So today's show is a spirit of reflection. We talked about 60 Minutes interview with Pope Francis on the Monday show briefly, but we're fortunate to have some Spanish-speaking members of the team here at Catholic Vote to check the translation, to dive into it a little bit more. And I thought this might be a good opportunity for us to just revisit that subject as a whole, because there was so much more, even though it was cut up quite a bit into about a 13-minute interview. Erica, you really prompted this. Why did you want to come back and revisit this interview?
Yeah, I think, after the show on Monday, I went back and I watched the whole thing start to finish. Again, I read the transcript and I wanted to be able to spend a little more time on it. I think because it is the Pope and it's just, I want to be able to give a more thorough reflection on it and really think about what he said, what 60 Minutes did with what he said and what we actually know. Than just, hot takes are important, but it's also important to take some time and reflect and watch the whole thing. So I spent more time, watched the whole thing start to finish. And I have to say, in that reflection, my estimation of Nora definitely plummeted with the quality of the questions she was asking. And my estimation of the Pope's performance, as it were, really went up. And again, like you said, just to give this some context, she says at the beginning, she's like, we spoke to him for over an hour in the Vatican. And what you get out of this is a 13-minute segment chopped up. And probably, I think I timed it about 8.5 minutes of the Pope actually speaking with her between the framing of the questions and all
What
that.
does that suggest to you, Erica, if she
It
talked for
suggests
an
to
over
me
an
that,
hour and
yeah,
13 minutes showed up?
it suggests to me that we will never really know the Pope's actual, a lot of the nuance that could have gone into this, a lot of the explanation. I think one of my criticisms on Monday of him was I never heard the name Jesus Christ. And it does suggest to me that that might have been an editorial decision by 60 Minutes rather than the Pope himself. So again, knowing the Pope and reading some of his documents like Laudate Si and the follow-up to that, his apostolic exhortations about the climate, is not within, the realm of impossibility that he did not mention Jesus, because there have been other documents where Jesus makes very few appearances. So that might have been the case. But again, to give it full benefit of the doubt, it very much could have been that 60 Minutes had 60 minutes of the Pope talking and got it down to 8.5. And that's what they chose to highlight. So
60 Minutes is pretty infamous for butchering people. I mean, you think back
yeah.
to Moms for
Tiffany
Liberty, what they
Justice.
did to
Yeah.
them, and they come in with their bend. But I think what I'm hoping for, because you did take the time to go back through, and I went back through and watched. So what stuck out to you in the exchanges that they did include in the end? What did you revisit that maybe piqued your interest?
Yeah, so I think what most piqued my interest was the way that she would ask a very pointed political question, like, do you have anything to say to Vladimir Putin? And you hold your breath, you're like, what's he going to say to Vladimir? And he just wouldn't play the game. He would say to all the warring nations, please, peace, negotiate. I'm praying for peace. And that was impressive to me. The Pope has not always been reluctant to stick his nose in politically, but in this interview, he very much was trying to get it back to the more global message, the Catholic message, which is we need peace. We need to think of the migrant. I was actually impressed on revisiting his immigration response, where she says, the United States wants to close the southern border and they're trying to take money away from a Catholic charity. First of all, there's so many details that I'm sure the Pope is not aware of. But what he came back to was, look, the people who come to the border, he says the migrant has to be received. And of course, what the left did with that was the Pope said you have to accept all migrants and you have to open your borders, which is not what he said, because immediately following, he goes, thereafter, after you receive them at the border, you see how you are going to deal with him. Maybe you have to send him back. I don't know, but each case ought to be considered humanely, right? And then he told this based immigration joke about how the Irish brought whiskey and the Italians brought the mafia. And that was my favorite part, because then Nora
not
goes,
untrue.
not untrue. And Nora's face kind of falls a little bit. They didn't edit it out. Her face falls a little bit. And he's like, it's a joke. Don't worry. And it was that was a priceless moment. I really appreciated that. Where I still had an issue, I'm going to keep going, Josh, if that's okay. Where I still had an issue, though, and again, this could have been the editing, but she asks him, where do you look to find hope in the world? And everything's falling apart. Where do you look to find hope, Holy Father? And I'm expecting to hear Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. Like a little John Paul II moment there. No, he's like, I find hope everywhere. And then he goes into this anthropological kind of reflection about how everyone's really good at heart. There are a few bad actors in the world, but every human person is just it was kind of like a, post-liberal order anthropology that I'm just like, I don't think we're all good
Can
at
I tell you
heart. Like,
something?
I crucified
Of all-
Jesus.
Of all the things I nitpick about Pope Francis, the one thing I took from this interview is I would say the Calvinists were super upset by what he said there.
That's right.
And I'm like, actually, what he said was Catholic.
Right.
I mean,
you can read.
We were created by our Heavenly Father. We were created male and female, and it is good. This creation that He has made, we are made in His image. That is a good thing. So to speak of it in that manner is not actually wrong. It obviously we're disfigured by original sin. I wish he would have added that, but on its own,
he did say he's a sinner. He did say that. I have to be fair. Like there was another area where
I didn't take a huge problem with it either. That seemed like some people really jumped on social media, and it was because, as Josh said, it's a very like Calvinist Protestant understanding of
so Erica, you got to get a little less Calvinist here.
I know.
Calvinist,
I think it was Avery Cardinal Dulles once said that all American Catholics are Calvinists. So I'm just I need to get out of that.
It's Cardinal George. I got to give him
Cardinal
credit.
George. Thank you. Yeah, I gotta get out of that.
Good old Cardinal George.
No, but overall, I mean, yeah, the interview was, again, I guess it could have been worse. I mean, the thing is, anytime you're right, you have 60 minutes and they'll record for an hour, maybe two hours, and they'll slice and dice it, and of course, in order to make television riveting and interesting, you want the pace to be good and the questions to go, quick and have good answers to it. You can faithfully represent anybody if you want to. I don't think they were necessarily unfaithful, but it's true they were trying to do gotcha questions, and they are in the business of entertainment. I mean, whatever. I'm glad he didn't. I agree with you. I'm glad he didn't take the bait on Vladimir Putin. I wish he would have taken the bait on conservatives in the United States. He apparently was more than willing to call us suicidal, which is, thanks a lot, bro. That's really nice.
Happy to take the bait on that one. They knew what they were doing with that one. But the one he definitely didn't take the bait on was woman priesthood. And I think anyone who's
or diaconate, right?
Right. Anyone who's Catholic goes to mass, faithful mass going Catholics. I don't think anyone was upset by that answer, but you would be surprised to see some of the reactions online, especially from very progressive Catholic organizations talking, because it's the way that she framed the question. And maybe I need to go back and even find it as a little girl growing up in the church, what would you say to someone? Seriously, like get out the tiny violin.
What would you say to the little girl?
And he's just like, no, it's not possible. That's not how, I think the exact term he used was just no.
Yeah, he just leans forward and goes, no.
Yeah, no. But yeah, it's not, I think he didn't take the bait on that one. He hasn't really taken the bait on. He's been very clear about that through his papacy. And yet it still seems kind of like a hill to die on from a lot of progressive Catholics of like, no, we need to have this. We need to have this. This needs to be involved.
It's because the Catholic left wants to remake the church in its image, not Christ's.
Correct. And even his answer on surrogacy was good, but I wish he would have been even a little bit. They kind of had a moment where I'm sure I'm an editor. Like I understand what they were doing here. Like she asked the question about women who wish to conceive. Of course, like the tear-jerking example of people who can't conceive, who want to have a child. What do? Surrogacy is an option. Why can't they do it? And he said, well, there's another option. It's called adoption, which is, of course, like the right answer there. And then he also talked about how it can turn into somewhat of a currency. Currency is not the right word, but human trafficking is the one I always come back to. But like basically a transaction, right? Transaction is the word I was looking for there. And he's correct. And he's like, but I understand that you use the phrase, it's the last hope for some women. And I understand that because I understand women in that condition. She's like, and that's why people love you as the Pope, because you've been so open and nice and understanding and whatever. It's just like, I could see what they were doing there, and I wonder how they edited that as well. But I mean, it seemed like a good answer. I think it could have been a lot worse.
Well,
there have been worse
interviews. With that kind of stuff is they always pray, hey, we praise you for being understanding, and we expect it to be the first step towards actually changing your position. That's always what it is. See, in other words, understanding isn't enough for these people. It's not that you understand how they feel. It's like, okay, now that you understand, change the position. And you see the on social media, as you mentioned, that people were calling for women to be in the diaconate and the priesthood, and they're like, well, he just doesn't understand. And if he could listen a little bit more to our experiences, it's like, oh, I see. It's never that your position has been considered and then ultimately rejected. It's that you just haven't thought about it enough. Well, at least you're welcoming and listening, and maybe you'll get there eventually. It's not ever the possibility like, not going to happen.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the exchange of Winston Marshall and Nancy Pelosi when she said that conservatives in America just cannot get beyond the culture war considerations. It's clouding their judgment from what actually is good for them. And so it kind of feels like that attitude of like, oh, well, your judgment's just clouded. You know, once you get past that, once you understand things a little bit more, you're going to come to my side, see the light. So
it's just in general the way the left treats conservatism. You know, they're like, conservatives are either evil or they're greedy. It can't be actually that they have an authentic disagreement about how to live your life. You know, that's impossible.
Well, or they're delusional, per Nancy Pelosi with the Winston Marshall, right? They have the gods, guns, and gays thing, and that, like, they're just too dumb to see what's good for them, and I know what's good for them. So it's that elitist kind of mentality.
So it's incumbent upon us to actually understand that there are people who subscribe to left-wing ideas, and they may not be stupid. They may not be greedy or selfish or power motivated or whatever. They may authentically think, oh, I care about people, and must be the reason, you know, I must support this position or whatever. So, you know, we should make sure we don't fall into the same trap where we automatically assume our opponents are obviously evil. I mean, we all have work to do on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is an opportunity. We had other things we want to talk about, but I want to bring this up because this kind of came across the desk, and there's so much here. So Bishop Stowe, Bishop John Stowe, the Bishop of Lexington, Kentucky, notable achievements. He is anti-Eucharistic revival, criticizes pro-lifers regularly. He is against denying the Eucharist to pro-abortion politicians. He wrote an op-ed ripping Nicholas Sandman, the Covington Catholic kid who was maligned by the media, wrote an op-ed for Washington Post talking about how it was disgusting. He couldn't believe people were wearing hats like that. Climate change is a top priority for his administration. Says blessing same-sex couples almost signifies God's approval. And my personal favorite, he fired people in his diocese for not getting vaccinated. And he said that Catholics deserve to know if their priest is unvaccinated. He actually made a couple of his priests publicly announce during Mass what their vaccination status while he was sitting in there. So probably my least favorite.
And also he endorsed the Equality Act, which is a totally radical piece of legislation that the bishops oppose, but he likes it.
Right. So I'm beyond.
You know, Bishop Stowe is about as horrible as it gets.
Right. So like to your point, Josh, like, okay, you need to approach some people with goodwill. Understand that there's people out there that truly are just sympathetic and don't know what's going on. This guy's far beyond not knowing what's going on. He actively is a champion of basically everything the church opposes. So there was an article from NCR covering a person now known as Brother
Not
Christian
the Register.
Madison.
I just want to be
Not
very
the Register.
clear. The
National Catholic
reporter.
Reporter.
Yeah.
National
And
Communist
it was
Reporter.
about
Catholic Reporter. Sorry.
Yeah, and it was about a hermit coming out on Pentecost as transgender. Okay, so I'm just going to already apologize in advance because, I mean, he very much looks like a man at this point, or she looks like a man. I'm not going to. This is going to be tough with the pronouns. It always is.
She fooled me.
So this is a woman who converted to Catholicism in 2010 and transitioned surgically in college. So this is a while back. And so the story goes, and they did this glowing profile about how this person came out as transgender, who's now a hermit in the Diocese of Kentucky. As Bishop Stowe becomes relevant in this story, but just a brief backstory on what's going on here. She felt called to minister to people in the arts, but knew she would encounter, quote, issues because of a 2000 Vatican document, according to Catholic News Service report from the time, declared that anyone who had undergone sex change was ineligible to marry, be ordained to the priesthood, or enter religious life. She was told that being a hermit was the best possible path to potentially have this religious vocation in the religious life because they can be male or female. She consulted a canon lawyer, said she would need to find a bishop that would accept her, essentially. So she goes through a decade of rejection, even by the Jesuits, may I note, which was
Whoa.
surprising even to me. So said that
Wow.
she told people that she was told by people she clearly had a religious vocation, but leaders of different orders wouldn't meet with her because they didn't know how to incorporate her. And let me stop at this point in the explanation. I feel really bad and I feel a lot of sympathy for her. She clearly didn't have anyone that she met with that cared enough for her to sit down and have a conversation with her about what's going on in her life instead of either just not meeting with her. We don't know that for sure because this is, of course, going to be but this is how I'm feeling right now. Like, if she's just being pushed along in the system and no one has sat her down and been like, hey, let's take care of these things. So I already feel a little bit bad. So just to continue, she creates this nonprofit to serve artists and performers at the time. And she was still looking around for places to accept her so that she could be entered into religious life. And so Bishop Stowe found out about and accepted her. So in August 2022, Matson took her first vows as a diocesan hermit, a year-long commitment under Stowe's direction. So for the next year, she lived a life of basically spending half the day in prayer and half the day doing some form of work that included producing and writing at a local theater. And Matson vented her frustrations to Stowe and his spiritual director, saying he wanted to speak out about being transgender, but she said that she was advised to first build a foundation in religious life for several years. And she finally came out now over Pentecost because she felt so called, because she had an experience with someone who was transgender or non-binary, a student, felt like she really needed to say something. And her end quote was, "You've got to deal with us because God called us into his church," she said. "It's not your church to kick us out of. This is God's church, and God has called us and engrafted us into it." She is aware that this announcement potentially means she could be removed or face some type of reprimand, but made a big glowing
presumably
announcement.
on God's terms, right? If it's his church, not necessarily your terms. That's what I find so illuminating here.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I mean, you contrast this with the role of a hermit in the church, and it's so performative, right? And I need to come out, like literally come out of the hermitage where you should be, and then come out as transgender, and that this is somehow determinative of who you are. Like you said, Josh, that's so well put. Like, if it is God's church, then your struggles and your brokenness is on his terms, and it's not that the rest of the church has to now lie and call you a he, and change what a hermit is and allow hermits to be producing theater. I mean, the whole thing is so 2 + 2 is 5 to me. And what Stowe has done here with the status of hermits in his diocese. And like you said too, Tom, I think my reaction is this poor person has been like, I'm sure they have culpability themselves in some way. I don't know what it is, but that Stowe has somehow created this false life for them, out of a false sense of compassion or whatever, and an agenda to just it ends up blowing up what the hermetic life is supposed to be,
Right.
and blowing up this person's shot at reconciliation with God and the church in the way that she was created in his image. And the whole thing is, it makes me sick.
Bishop Stowe, of course, put out a big announcement saying that this was happening and using the wrong pronouns and talking about how just wants to sincerely serve God and he wants to enable that. Unless you're unvaccinated, I guess, then go kick rocks. But the hypocrisy of this is just screaming to me, and I think maybe what bothers me most is it actually feels like it's denigrating a true vocation to being a hermit. I mean, we even went to the Catechism of the Catholic Church of just what this life is supposed to be. So just think about this from the Catechism. Think about what we just said. So without always professing the 3 evangelical councils publicly, hermits devote their life to the praise of God and salvation of the world through a stricter separation from the world, the silence of solitude, and assiduous prayer and penance. They manifest everyone the interior aspect of the mystery of the church, that is, personal intimacy with Christ. Hidden from the eyes of men, the life of the hermit is silently preaching of the Lord, to whom he has surrendered his life simply because he is everything to him. Here is a particular call to find in the desert, in the thick of spiritual battle, the glory of the crucified one. So it feels like they just created, like they were looking for loopholes. They created this facade that they were somehow going to be a hermit because that was the best path forward to dodge church authority, and said, all right, now go around and find someone who will accept you. And of course, we get Bishop Stowe, who has a history of championing all of these causes, and also is now platforming this person to make a bunch of noise and to cause a ruckus, which is against the exact purpose from the Catechism of the Churches of what hermit is supposed to be.
Yeah, and I just find it, again, hilarious that the Catholic left likes to scold everyone. You need to listen to this person and their experiences, and we need to completely change everything we're doing and change everything about our practice and our teaching to conform to this new thing. Okay, so it reminds me of the conversation that happened, I think it was last week, where a few of the bishops, like Bishop Barron and Cardinal McElroy of San Diego, along with Gloria Purvis, they had this discussion, about how the church can be less polarizing, between the left and the right and the conservatives and liberals and the going back and forth and all that kind of stuff. And the presumption here is just that, well, the liberals and the conservatives both have their strong views and they're angry at each other, and they just got to, maybe they should be nicer and treat each other with respect. And I guess I would just point back to well, wait a minute now. Is it that we're having difficulties in interpreting what the church is teaching and, and living that out? No, it's that one side is against everything that we stand for and they're agitating against it. It's not like the conservatives are suddenly saying, well, wouldn't it be nice if church teaching on human sexuality were a little bit different so that if, that someone wanted to have, I don't know what conservatives would want, to not pay their employees right, to be able to lust after pornography. What is the argument that would be there? The conservatives are like, yeah, we're horrible sinners and we need church teaching to keep us on path and to reform ourselves and realize that each of us have sin and we need to make ourselves better. We're not trying to change the deposit of the faith to conform to what we have and what we want. And oh, would it be nice? We wouldn't have to follow this rule. Like that, I don't understand. But it's the left is saying, oh, well, we're too obsessed with, trying to protect babies in the womb, and we should be able to completely transform who we are, male to female. Like, what?
Well, Josh,
so this idea, it just drives me up the wall. It's like, it's not two sides are just having a difference of opinion. They want to completely change the entire church.
It sounds suicidal almost.
Did you here's a great example of this. Did you see that Gloria Purvis basically called people Nazis and then was like mad that people were responding back like, hey, maybe you shouldn't call people Nazis and then we could have a civil discussion? She's like, stop using ad hominem attacks. It's like, that's how it works.
Well,
she's about the worst of the worst ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
she's a big time race baiter, but isn't that kind of the point? It's like, why is everything so polarized? I wonder. It's like, we'll stop calling people who are unvaccinated grandma killers. Don't fire them and don't, publicly shame priests for making personal health decisions. And then at the same time, pull out these performative hermits to try to prove a political point that you're against church teaching on sexuality. I mean, this goes against Dignitas Infinita. It goes against all the things the Pope said about gender ideology. I mean, this is clearly
you look at these people like Bishop Stowe, and you really think that they think everything is, the society is normal and the church is what's wrong. It's like, giving me a break. The church needs to get with the times. Like, no. It's the 21st century that needs a serious infusion of church teaching, not the other way around. Like, get over it, guys. How can you look at all the mayhem and havoc that the sexual revolution has brought and think, boy, we need just to put a Catholic blessing on all of it? No.
Did you guys see the Woke Jesus video from Babylon Bee?
Yeah. That was great.
That was awesome. If anyone needs like a light pick me up to laugh at this,
just needs to make,
Babylon Bee, Woke Jesus, check it out. So good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I just want to plug that one in there.
Probably covers it in a
appropriate.
funnier, more eloquent way than we're talking about it now. I just think there's just general frustration, I think, from this whole situation. It just feels performative and wrong.
Well, and again, quality control. I mean, the thing that frustrates so many Catholics is if you imagine a scenario. So there was near where I live, a Dairy Queen that they started serving actual fresh meat hamburgers instead of frozen patties. And Dairy Queen said, no, dude, you can't do that. Because then people are going to go to another Dairy Queen and say, why was the hamburgers crap and over here it was really good? Dairy Queen's like, we're going to serve the same crappy hamburgers everywhere. And so that the owner's like, okay, fine. And he's no longer a Dairy Queen. He sells great hamburgers. And the line at that Daily Chill in Charlevoix is always packed because it's great. But see, the thing is, I think so many Catholics are like, well, why doesn't our Catholic Church exercise a little bit of the same quality control? You go to McDonald's and the fries don't taste. Well, this doesn't taste normal. Like, what's going on here? I don't understand this. Headquarters says, nah, that's not who we are. But with the Catholic Church, you can have a bishop like Bishop Stowe totally go rogue, completely lose it. Like, oh yeah, you can be a hermit and be transgender. Oh yeah, you can completely support the Equality Act and all these other horrible things. Kick people out who aren't vaccinated. I mean, just what is going on with this guy? Isn't there? Why can't we have a little quality control and say, this guy, Bishop Stowe, maybe he should be an Anglican bishop at this point, because he's not really Catholic at all.
Hey, don't
honestly.
insult Anglicans like that. I know plenty.
Maybe
of good Anglicans.
Episcopalian.
Yeah. Push him somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the frustration when the whole thing with like Bishop Strickland went down, right? That you're
sure.
watching guys like Stowe over here, and then you see this the treatment of
It's
someone.
only
like
one side that
Strickland.
gets punished if they go out of line.
Yeah, and it's just
What does
it's
that tell
hard
you?
It's hard to conclude anything but agenda.
Very true. So yeah, we move on now to more of the political conversations going on, and there's a lot of things. We're going to bring them together in a little bit of a mixed bag, but I think the way that I'm organizing it is we have Trump and Biden, obviously the two opponents coming for the election, but there's different efforts to try to, from mainstream at large, to discredit Trump, and then there's the defense of Biden is what I'm seeing right now. The chief among being a lot of the lawfare going on right now. So the defense just rested in the case involving the hush money payments. Okay. So that's the first one. It's confusing. I think what's more interesting about it is the broader effort to try to discredit and to see if this is going to be successful rather than the specifics of the case. But Erica, if you just want to give a quick wrap on what's going on there.
Yeah, I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible. And if everyone just wants to take a little nap, I get it, because according to polling, only 13% of you even care. But anyway, Alvin Bragg, New York DA, has charged Trump with 34 instances of falsifying business records in connection to the reimbursements sent to fixer Michael Cohen. That's that's an important name. After he paid porn actress Stormy Daniels $130,000 to keep her quiet ahead of the 2016 presidential election. They are charging him with falsifying business records in the first degree, and that's a felony, stepped up from the usual misdemeanor charge, because they're alleging that Trump cooked the books with the intent to commit another crime, fix the election. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Like at this point, I'm just like, where
important
am
to note,
I?
this is a novel charge. This is not, no American has ever been charged with this
They
before.
made
It's
up
a
this
brand new
charge for Trump for this particular situation, and they have made no bones about that. That's just, it was funny. I was trying to understand what was going on, and I found this New York attorney's page where they actually had several different iterations of flowcharts with like, it looks like one of those conspiracy theory things with the red lines and like trying to connect all the charges. And even the New York Attorneys Association couldn't
It's almost
figure
like
it
this
out.
is politically motivated or something.
Maybe it could be. Basically, what happened with the trial, we have now arrested the defense after 2 witnesses. It's kind of a banger moment, right? The 2 witnesses from the defense after 20 witnesses from the prosecution in 3 weeks. Their key witness on the prosecution end, there's going to clinch everything, was Michael Cohen himself, who has been convicted multiple times and let off the hook. He was supposed to provide,
right?
Yes. Now he's supposed to provide this eyewitness testimony that Trump knew he was moving the funds and fully intended to swing the election. And instead, on day 3 of cross-examination with Cohen, he confessed to larceny on the stand, saying, actually, I stole $60,000 from the very transaction in question. Trump had no idea, but I stole $60,000 from him because I felt that it was owed me and that Trump didn't really deserve that. Stormy didn't deserve the money I was shuttling. It was absolutely oops moment. And
yeah, I think it was 30,000, but yeah, because what he did is he took 50 grand, and he used 20 grand to pay off the person. He kept the other 30 grand to himself.
By the end of the day, according to Jake Tapper, it was 60. I'm going off Jake. Wow, don't know what a good. Yeah, he might be off the hook too. But I mean, it was lovely watching.
Well, again, it's one of those things where it's like, why is it once a misdemeanor, but because it's Trump, we're going to make it a felony? That's a good question.
Yeah.
And then this idea, it's not like you're fixing the election. What this amounts to is their big point here is that if people had known about this ahead of time, it might have changed how they voted in the presidential race. It might have. It might not have. But that, again, so it's just like the Hunter laptop thing. If people found out about it, it might change their view of the election, or it might not have. People might have still said, "I don't care. I want to get rid of Trump. I'm going to vote for Biden." So what? So again, the idea that you want to keep negative information from coming to light isn't fixing an election. You're just trying to prevent bad information from getting out. That's not a crime.
It's certainly
It's
not a
not
felony.
fixing an election. This idea that it's a felony. So this is what we're getting at, like with these cases where they just, again, they're trying to, it's like, can you beat them in the ballot box? Well, then let's try to prosecute them. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know if you saw, there was it's like why people don't trust mainstream news anymore. There's a news headline, I think it was from MSNBC, where they said something about Michael Cohen. They're like, Michael Cohen can't be trusted because of his history of lies. And this was back in like 2016. And then the most recent article was, actually, Michael Cohen lying in the past makes him more credible right now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh,
Okay.
people. Like you gotta pick a
Well,
side.
and
Same news
again, it's like,
organization.
Spell that out.
and then what came to light recently was that they actually, for the FBI raid, the Biden administration authorized the lethal use of force at Mar-a-Lago to recover classified documents. You're like, really? Lethal use of force?
Although I did see our boy Seraphin was like, that's pretty normal for an FBI raid.
Is it really? It just seems a little like,
He said that actually is pretty standard. So I actually, because I saw that and I was like, wow, it's really outrageous. And then he's like, yeah, no, this happens all the time in every FBI operation. It's like, oh.
Good thing we have
as we saw from
Sorry
Mark
to put a
Hart,
downer
they
on
can
that.
kind of take it a little too much,
Yeah,
Just
totally.
chill out, guys.
Okay, so we have the courts attempt to take him down. It doesn't look
Yeah.
like it's going to be successful. I'd say like the consensus is the only challenge of this is that election law is very complex and confusing. And so from a jury perspective, like they would have to convict him based upon something that is a little confusing to begin with because the charge is confusing and convoluted. So anyway, we'll see what happens there.
I've said that with regards to political scandals too. It has to be simple for it to really make a mark.
Right.
Like we found $70,000 in some congressman's refrigerator. You took a bribe. That's easy, and that's why sex scandals tend to be easier. Like for example, what do you try to prove? It seems like he had an affair with this Stormy Daniels. That probably happened, right? But what do you try to prove? That he was trying to fix an election? Where's the argument there? Or that he in his books he wrote it down as something else. Okay, that sounds like a misdemeanor. Again, it's not like a smoking gun. Like, oh, well, therefore
So Josh,
he should be thrown in jail. It doesn't make
So
any
Josh,
sense.
if you don't have a smoking gun, you can consult Hollywood to make one. So interesting, we have from the courts attack, but we have what I'm calling a sneak biopic. So at the Cannes Film Festival, a movie starring Sebastian Stan, Jeremy Strong, actors instructed to keep it under wraps until this premiere. So they're making a biopic of Trump back in the day. The movie goes over his relationship with I believe he was involved with McCarthy, his former, let me see if I can find that. It was his former advisor back in the day. Basically, he was also an advisor to McCarthy, Democrat activist. And it's labeled as inspired by true events. And the director's speech.
Emphasis inspired.
Right. Emphasis on inspired. Trump team.
No, I think
angry. They want to sue on this. Director's speech after the screening got a standing ovation. Ali Abbasi addressed the Cannes audience saying, "There is no nice metaphorical way to deal with the rising wave of fascism. The good people have been quiet for too long," he said. "So I think it's time to make movies relevant. It's time to make movies political again." So he did say that he's like, I don't think Trump would dislike it, but I think that Trump, I don't think he also might like it. So it's kind of out there. They hid it to of course, like garner attention before the election. Interesting.
Yeah,
Let
and
me
I
just
just
help you with what you're trying to say about with regards to what the nature of the film is.
Okay.
So you know how like right now Michael Cohen, well not now, but like Michael Cohen served as Trump's fixer, for a good 15, 20 years or whatever. The idea is that Trump had used a different guy in like the 70s and early 80s, and that guy was Roy Cohen.
Yes.
And he was involved with Senator Joe McCarthy of the 1950s, the McCarthy era, not a Democrat. He was the staunch anti-communist senator from Wisconsin that the left thinks is the evilness McCarthy era.
They love that
And
connection.
they're like, oh, what is it that was so bad about McCarthy? Let me just make sure I understand. He said the State Department was full of so many communists and all these different. Like, oh well, yeah, but I mean, they were full of communists. Like,
And his
like,
actual crime, no, Josh, the worst crime of McCarthy was that he said Hollywood was full of communists. That's
pretty
what
obvious.
really
Ronald
hate
Reagan
him
was
for
like,
it.
yeah, they kind of were,
Yeah. It's true.
Okay, so the movie's
So
about
that's what it was.
yes, the
about.
movie
That's-
follows around his relationship with that. It's about being a ruthless businessman in New York. It also goes off of, I believe, a deposition from his first wife that it said in the deposition that she was raped, but afterwards she said that that wasn't true and that was
It
like
was a metaphor.
misconstrued. It was a metaphor. But of course, I mean, in Hollywood, that's enough to make.
No, they had
something
an
like
actual rape scene in the movie of
Yeah.
Trump. I mean, talk about libel, man.
Yeah, so he did say he'd screen it for Trump. I don't think they have any interest. Trump's team is suing right now. And then even people who helped finance the movie are upset. I know Dan Snyder being one of them, either, I think, former owner of the, well, not the R words, the Washington Commanders, because we're politically correct on here, formerly Redskins.
What a
Anyway,
dumb
he's
name
threatening
that
to
is,
pull
too.
out money. He wants to see different cuts. I mean, it's an interesting concept. Like, has that ever happened before, where you would like hide a movie until election year, let it rip? How do you even get the rights to someone's life like that? Like, if I wanted to do a biopic on someone, would I have to sign
No,
off
you
on
can do
someone doing a
whatever you want.
biopic on
It's a
me?
free country. I mean, just like
guess.
Citizens United is a conservative organization, and they did a documentary about Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton said, "Wait a minute, we want to shut this down because that would be," she said, political. It's basically a political campaign expenditure. And these filmmakers are like, look, we can make a film about anything in the world, but then if we suddenly talk about Hillary Clinton, you're saying we can't do it because then it would constitute like a political expenditure that we have to file with the FEC and all this other stuff, just like all the commercials you see on TV. And they went all the way to the Supreme Court and they won. The filmmakers won. It was awesome. And it liberated political speech from all this stupid there's still regulations on it, and the left hates it. Every once in a while you see the left says, Citizens United is horrible. We need to have government strangulating political speech again so that only our buddies in the media can tell you what you can hear and everything. That, again, it's one of those things where the internet comes along and you see the opportunity for a lot of different viewpoints to come to bear, and the left hates it because the left loved being the gatekeepers in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. No one else got their viewpoints through, and they were able to, be the watchdogs and make sure only approved opinions could get out there. And now that we have more free speech, they hated it. And so these filmmakers, they have every right, I think, to put it out there. And, if it's, I'm surprised they didn't go like the route of Primary Colors, where it was obviously a movie about Bill Clinton, but they used Stanton instead of Clinton and all these
Right.
other things. They could have gone that route where everyone would have known what they meant. But
Yeah, and I
whatever.
think it's important to recognize, like, and to just get the message out that this film is intended. I think it's intended to influence the election for sure, just the timing of it. So it's at this year's Cannes Festival. It's going to get shopped around, probably going to be released in the fall ahead of the election, and it's just it's tearing into Trump's early character, hitting up women with the rape scene. And the director himself says, I think it's time to make movies relevant. It's time to make movies political again. So this is like, he directed this with that in mind, and that he needs to stand up to the rising wave of fascism, which is the term that everyone pulls out on the left when they're talking about Trump. I don't think they've ever actually studied what fascism is, but aside from that, but I think that, yeah, Hollywood, like you were saying, Tom, Hollywood using a particular film in this way it does feel like something new to me as well, that it's so pointed. Like you said, it's not Primary Colors where they change the names to protect the innocent or something, or the not innocent in that case. So yeah, this seems like another legend.
Was Primary Colors a movie? I'm just unfamiliar with that phrase.
John Travolta, yeah.
Okay, it was a movie, and so now people just use that as an example when you switch names.
Well, I mean, it was not the biggest hit in the world anyway. I mean, that's the concern here. I would say with these filmmakers, like it's going to be basically fan fiction for people who love how much they hate Donald Trump, and so
Right.
they'll
Very
make
well
they'll make their money
said.
back, I guess, but it's not going to have that much of an impact. I mean, you could put up any movie and say, hey, if you want to show you hate Donald Trump, spend $10 watching this movie, and
Yeah.
that's about all the impact it's going to have.
Yeah,
Okay, we
not
move
gonna
on
change
to
minds.
our Biden section now. And this one really this one makes me angry. So AP headline, Biden releasing, let's see, I'm getting AP blocked here. Biden releasing 1 million barrels of gasoline from Northeast Reserve in bid to lower prices at the pump.
Shocking? Absolutely nobody.
No. He's like, energy prices are through the roof, and it's pretty clearly my fault. So what will I do? Oh,
I mean, at
I
this
know.
point,
I have these
you know-
strategic reserves.
This
I mean, the
doesn't
idea
feel much
was-
different than forgiving loans, except for the fact that if we get attacked, we're in trouble.
Right. And again, I don't like that we have a Federal Reserve at all, okay? But at least ostensibly, the idea is the rates the interest rates are not set by the President of the United States. He can't just lower I want it lowered a bunch because I'm facing a tough reelection campaign. We realize that we've decided that would be a disastrous thing to do politically. But why do we allow it for the strategic oil reserve? I think Congress needs to step in. It's not going to happen now, but when the election gets over, we need to actually change the law on this so that there would be some mechanism where you would not just be able to, as the president, or have one of your lower level employees or even a cabinet secretary do this. Like the oil reserve should not be just to pump up your poll numbers. It's a bunch of garbage and it's horrible. And it leaves us vulnerable, as you say. What happens if there's suddenly an attack and we have a lot less oil reserves? Again, Joe Biden puts him and his family first and doesn't care about you and your family. Just remember that.
Mm-hmm.
This just
Very
feels
much.
treasonous. This feels like treason.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
mean,
if there's anything else to say about
He
it.
has to do this, right? Because, and we're going to talk about the next one in a second, because what are the two biggest issues for voters in the election? We know that they are first, the economy. Well, they're pretty much tied right now, right, Josh? So we've got the economy, and energy prices for the average American consumer are so much higher now than they were. And the Mickey D's hamburgers, very expensive. Might have seen that one. And then second, immigration. And that's where the next, oh, there we go.
Yeah, let's
McDonald's
go over those
price.
numbers real quick. 'Cause the
Yeah,
inflation
I wanna
charts
look
were
at these.
shocking.
This is what hits me in the wallet here. McDonald's price increases.
Yeah,
I
so
know,
the Wall
it's like
Street.
it's so expensive. It's like, why am I even like I would take my family to McDonald's because you're cheap. Now that you're
For
expensive,
fun.
dude, I'll
Yeah.
just go to Wendy's. Like, I mean, this is the dumbest thing.
I don't know. It's kind of going up everywhere. It's not just McDonald's and Taco Bell.
No, I know,
This
but
is
the
just across
difference
the
in
board.
price, it's like if I'm going to spend $60-$70 to feed my family, I'll just do a little bit more and get Culver's, which is actually enjoyable to eat and doesn't taste like garbage.
Culver's ain't cheap either. I'm just saying across the board, it's really
I
going
know
up.
it's
And I
not
think-
cheap, brother. Do you not hear me? Like, yeah.
I do hear you. You're saying I'm not going to go to McDonald's. I'm going to go somewhere with actual good food, but all food's up, Josh. Like it's not a solution.
No, but you don't understand, though, I think what I'm trying to say.
All right, tell me.
The price of all fast food has gone up by a
Correct.
significant margin, but McDonald's prices have gone even more than the other ones have done. So that the gulf between used to be that McDonald's would be like significantly cheaper, like 25% cheaper
The
than
dollar
other
menu.
fast food places. Yeah, and so it's like you could actually get a value for your money, but it's like, wait a minute now. Not only is it more expensive than it was, we sort of expect that. The price gap is not actually that much anymore. So it's like, wait a minute. The whole bargain here was you were super cheap, even if your food was crappy. And it's like, well, I'm just going to go for better tasting food. If I'm going to pay through the nose anyway, might as well get good food.
I understand your point. The
Got
point and
it.
direction I'm trying to talk about is on a more macro level in that all fast food price has gone up, including McDonald's, including Culver's. It may be a slightly higher percentage of McDonald's, but for the average American consumer, to your point, Josh, for things to make an impact, they have to be simple and understandable. If I go and drive down a strip with multiple options for fast food, which people do, like I was just traveling on Monday, like, yeah, we had to stop and get something. It is shocking to me that at every place that I stop at, we're talking $4 or $5 more expensive for just about everything on the menu. I mean, there used to be value deals or whatever. Those are gone. That is a message sent to consumers, to voters. Well, this is happening now. It was not happening 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And
I'm perfectly willing to say what happened. We shut our economy down in
Right.
COVID. We shut it down. So the amount of productivity we had was significantly lower than we had because, we didn't want to catch the COVID flu. And so what happened is we still had a lot of consumption. People are still eating, and so we weren't as productive and we were consuming just as much. And the government flooded a ton of money into the economy. And so basically what happened, we spent like 5 years worth of money in 2 years. You know what I'm saying? And so like, you have all these extra dollars in the economy chasing after stuff, and it's going to drive the prices up no matter what. I mean, it's like gravity. What goes up must come down. So Trump spent a bunch with the CARES Act and all that other kind of stuff. Biden comes in. What he should have done is tighten spending, because there was going to be this, it's just like drinking. So if you just drink too much beer, too much, then there's going to be a hangover. We're in the hangover part, okay? We were consuming just as much as ever before, and we weren't producing as much as an economy, and now we're paying for it.
Well,
And
and
so,
not
like,
only were we in a hangover, but we're like, how am I going to fix my hangover symptoms? Oh, I'm going to have a shot of bourbon and maybe some whiskey. And like, we're just compounding and compounding it. Yeah. Check out this graph here. This is from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the change in household net worth since start of presidency. And I know we've said this before. The unique thing in this election campaign is that we have a former president and we have a president. They each have one term, and we can just put them next to each other. And so you see here the nominal value and adjusted for inflation, the household net worth for the Trump, it just went up and up and up and up. Not first since the start of the presidency. And Biden is just so much farther below him. It's shocking
Wow.
numbers, and people feel it every day when they go to McDonald's, like we're saying.
And the problem with it is that a lot of people who are upper middle class or wealthier, they have the ability to shield themselves from a lot of the pain because they can move their money into assets which are sort of a little bit more inflation resistant, okay? And they can kind of ride the wave. But like people who are paycheck to paycheck can't do that. And
Right.
that's why, these policies are just hurting. It's like, if anything, see now, say what you will about Republicans, they're not always right on everything, but like this is the time where, like, I even give credit to Jon Stewart, who's a leftist. He would say, at least George Bush would say, I don't know, we got to do something. We got to cut taxes. Give people a chance because they're drowning. And people who are on the upper levels, they can handle maybe a little bit better. But people who are paycheck to paycheck, inflation is the great thief. It's like I'm still getting paid the same amount, but everything is going up and up in price.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Right. And we're seeing this in the
time.
housing market. We see this in the housing market, especially. And, like I'm thinking about this because we're friends with a lot of young couples who cannot buy. Like you said, Josh, it's the wealthy and large corporations who can afford right now to get their money into real estate and to buy up these homes and to drive up the prices. And your average American family couple trying to like buy their first homes, they can, have their family have a home and all that. They just can't get into the market. And a lot of it is because of these regulatory policies coming out of COVID. And again, the rich get
and
richer.
part of it is
poor
that
get poorer.
some people bought a home when it was like they got an interest rate of like 2% or something like that.
Mhm.
And so, like, what are you crazy? I'm not. In that case, they're not going to want to sell their house.
Right.
They're like, I'm going to
Well, we're
ride it
never
out
moving.
because
Todd and I are like, nope,
if
never
I
moving.
buy another house somewhere else, I'm going to get paid 7% on that. So you're again, this is one of those things where government policies can have long-term effects that are really negative. Now, I would also say local governments need to make it so that it's easier to build houses. They put so many regulations on things like this, so it's harder. Like Texas is really pro building houses. They like make it easy for people to build houses. And so you're seeing a lot more housing being built in Florida and in Texas. California, forget it. I mean, they make it so hard. And so I really feel for people like that. I mean, if you want to start a family, Yeah, get out of California, go to Indiana, go to Texas, go to Florida,
I
somewhere
mean, I
where you
wish I
could.
could say it's a lot better here, but houses that would have been
Yeah.
like $250,000 are easy, like $400,000 now. It's just
I
the,
mean, you
the
got to
the
think it's
entry
a
point is so
bubble at
much
this
lower.
point. I would like to get corporations out of investing in single family homes. That'd be another thing I'd like to do.
That'd be
I'm not a
awesome.
pure libertarian. I'm sorry.
You once were, but you grew out of it. We slide into the Twilight Zone now. Erica, you're up first.
I am moving to South Korea. I'm very excited to announce because South Korea is considering paying couples to have babies, and this is jaw-dropping. 70,000 US dollars per baby. So South Korea, set the stage a little bit. South Korea has the lowest birth rate in the world at 0.78 per woman. I mean, that alone is just astonishing number. And they've been below replacement for a long time. And as one would expect, their economy is starting to look at this demographic cliff that they're about to leap off of. And so they're well below replacement. They're trying to subsidize these births. The radical solution would be baby bonuses of 100 million won, a little over US $73,000 each. It's going to cost the country, if they adopt this, over 16 billion per year. And if it's successful, the more babies people have, obviously would cost more. Now, I just want to warn South Korea, don't do it, because this is not the answer. Paying women to have babies is not going to turn this ship around, and you're going to sink your
On its
economy
own,
even
sure.
faster on its own. And I think, what we have to acknowledge is that convincing a couple with no children to take the leap and have that first child isn't something that can be just paid off, right? You can't say, I want you to give up, make all the sacrifices that motherhood requires. You're going to have, social costs, you're going to have career costs, opportunity cost is the large umbrella for all of that. And you can't have a one-time payment and convince women to go from 0 to 1. You may be able to convince them to go from 2 to 3 on that because the opportunity cost has been paid, as it were, and adding
That would
another.
help.
But you're not going to turn it around. What is going to turn this around is to look at women who are choosing to have more children, even without government subsidies, and ask, why are they doing that? And again, Catherine Pakaluk, in her book, Hannah's Children, examines this in depth. And what she finds is it is far and away women who have religious conviction, who feel supported by their religious community, to make the sacrifice, to feel supported in that sacrifice and honored in that sacrifice. So what a
Well-
government can do to help solve the problem is to support these institutions, to give religious institutions freedom and space to build schools, to build healthcare options, to support these women, not pay them $70,000. Although I
Wow.
wouldn't say no.
I think just the topic of whether or not we should subsidize that, give these baby bonuses, I think is good because then it invites this broader discussion and it says, what can we do to try to solve this problem as much as we can? Not that you're going to perfectly solve it, but like as Tim Carty said in his book, and I'm going to keep plugging it, I don't care. I get 5% of all sales, so I'll do that. That's a joke.
This is making sense now.
But he said that amongst secular Jews and even atheists in Israel, they have a larger fertility rate than secular Jews or atheists do in the United States or in Europe. And that's because the culture of Israel is pro-baby. They just, and a lot of the Jewish people in Israel are like, we need to have 6 kids. And the reason is they want to have a large family is because they're thinking about the 6 million that were lost in the Holocaust. So they have like a strong reason to say we need to make sure this nation is around. Okay. The effect of that, Tim Carney said, is that it's just in general a culture and a society that is friendly, that thinks about children, that you don't have people nagging about kids that make noise on an airplane. You don't have these signs saying a restaurant is proudly anti, kids. Don't bring them here. You have a culture that's like, yeah, okay, yeah, kids make noise, but you know what? We like kids. As my church likes to say, if a church ain't crying, it's dying. So
Dying.
that's good. Okay. So the secular and atheist Jews in Israel are having more kids because the culture is more pro-family. So that's what South Korea needs.
Amen. Josh, your Twilight Zone now.
Okay, so Portland, Oregon, crazy. So they have a district attorney, Mike Schmidt. He got elected with 77% of the vote back in 2020. A typical one of these Soros-backed psychopaths that just let the criminals go and do whatever the heck they want. Right? I mean, tell me you haven't heard this story
Sorry,
before.
you used the wrong word for empathetic.
Exactly. Well, guess what? We have elections in this country, and he just got booted out. Like,
Ooh.
what? The district attorney got booted out of Portland because he was too liberal? Oh, it's still my heart.
What planet am I
Josh's
rotating
heart was
on?
warmed there. You can just see it. in his
I mean,
eyes.
it's truly Twilight Zone in the best possible way. So, yeah, he's gone, and it's just a sight to see that even in Portland, a Soros-backed district attorney can get the boot.
Did you see? Daily Show. He's back. What's his name again? I'm rough.
Yeah,
today.
Jon Stewart.
Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
Jon Stewart just did something about cancel culture and how it's fake. The real cancel culture is if you criticize Trump. Did you see that?
What?
There's like Liz Cheney's the real example of cancel culture because she lost her job after she criticized Trump. Adam Schiff, like all these people, and I was like, I think there's a fundamental difference between getting getting removed from office by voters and people, falling from grace and fame. Like two different things here, Like
Yeah.
voters have a voice and they use it. And guess what? You're gone if you don't listen to the voters. Seemingly a different take there from Jon Stewart. But my Twilight Zone. So we have a job opening. Actually, kind of evergreen at Catholic Vote. Like if you're good at memes and you make me laugh, there'll always be a place here for you. But no, the Biden team has said they need to hire a meme manager as the president struggles from support from young voters. So there's kind of an evergreen joke going on about how the left can't meme. And it's true. I'm yet to see good memes from the left. So,
'Cause
and then
they're
I
not
saw
funny.
a great comparison from someone was like the Biden team writing a memes. It's like a newsroom full of people. And it's like the Trump team writing memes. It's like a dude on a toilet, like tweeting out a joke. It's so true. But, so yes, that's going on. So if anyone wants to go take a role, it's open. Best of luck. I mean, tough job right now. But I have another video that I'd like to show. It seems like their editing team is using AI, and so they're doing great. So they don't have any hirings there. If you could click on the next video, I just cannot stop watching this. So
Oh my gosh.
this one,
Donald Trump lost
All
two
right, we gotta
debates to
mute
me in
this 'cause it's just gonna be
2020.
gibberish.
Since then, he hadn't shown up for debates.
Let's see.
Now he-
Okay, I muted that. So the one on the left was a week before the one on the right. Look at these eyes, man.
Whoa.
Guys,
Okay. Yeah.
what are we doing
Whoa.
here? Who is working on their team to edit these? So first off, I was doing a little bit of research. I guess that NVIDIA has a software that will, like, even if you look away from the camera, it will keep your eyes looking at the camera. I'm 99% sure they're using this software. So both these were official videos sent from Biden's accounts. Clearly, I mean, the one on the right is different than the one on the left.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they're using an AI software to keep his eyes locked on the screen. His
and
voice
open.
sounds
He's not
different.
blinking.
I don't know if they might be editing his voice too, because his voice was deeper in this one, different in this one. There's a lot of games going on right now. So
That's creepy.
they can do
I'm
all this,
freaked
but they
out.
can't make good memes.
Well, so Jonathan Chait wrote about in New York Magazine. He was talking about how they do these focus groups and Democratic candidates running in the purple states, for Senate. They're doing actually relatively well competitively. It's just that Biden is really not doing well at all, and so they're sounding the alarm. Biden's not doing well, and it's just hilarious. The quote that Jonathan Chait said. He goes, if you go out there and do a focus group, the focus groups all say, he's 200 years old. You've got to be kidding me. And the worst part about it is for unaffiliated voters or people that haven't made up their mind yet, they look at this and say, you have got to be kidding us. these are our choices,
Yeah.
and they indict us for not taking it seriously. And so, like, I mean, like, how are you putting up this guy who's like 200 years old?
Did you
It's just
see?
people can't believe it.
Yeah, he was at a Israeli fundraiser for the Gaza war, and he actually was talking about the hostages who are still hostages, and he names the hostage. He's like, and here with us today is Mr.
Oh
Blank, his
no,
name.
that was bad.
And then he goes, oh wait, he's not here. He's still a hostage.
Oh.
And then he like stops and he turns and he's like, but we're gonna bring him home to the family. And I'm like, if I'm the family sitting in the front row there of this man who's still being tortured and held in Israel by
It's a
Hamas
family
in
show. I'm not
Gaza,
going to tell you what I would do or say.
yeah, I would have like thrown up and been like, can we get him not in charge of this effort? Because I'll never see my son again. It was stunning among a stunning clips that come out of Biden every day.
That was bad. And yeah,
It was
every day. It's just a
bad.
fire hose
It's
of
every day. Yeah.
what could
That's just-
possibly be the strategy for debating here?
I know. What's the debate going to be like?
Oh,
my
between
goodness.
Biden and Trump?
Yeah, give the
Yeah.
prediction on what you think the debate's gonna be like, Josh.
Yeah. Come on, Josh.
Well, I think the rationale by the Democrats is like get it done sooner rather than later, so people forget about it by the time November comes around. But I just don't think that's the case. I think, again, I think it's hilarious that Trump's like, we need a drug test because they're gonna. I mean, I think just like the State of the Union, they're gonna hop him, Biden up with so many drugs. And
Hey,
he can do well for about
they
90
denied
minutes.
that.
But then
He
after
was
that,
just
he's
high.
got to have his baby food and his nap
Yeah,
and
right.
crap his pants,
He was not drugged up. He was high on confidence. That's what the White House's official explanation was.
Is that what they call it on the streets?
Confidence.
Yeah, new drug on the
Confidence.
streets.
Right here.
Did you see there's an actual quote
In
of
powder
Trump
form.
talking about his DNA? He's like, I got tested by I think it was after he had COVID or something. He's like, I got tested by
Please
a
tell me
doctor.
he said tiger blood.
No, it came back. He's like, the only DNA I have is USA or something like that. It's like one of my favorite videos of all time. Like they said I had COVID, but my blood was too strong. My DNA is USA.
That is so cringe.
Guys, we are, man, we're living in the Twilight Zone. That's the only.
Yes, we are.
We're in
What
a
a time to have a
simulation.
podcast. This is
Exactly.
great.
right
Oh,
right
man.
time to have a podcast. But shout out to Jennifer, love the podcast, look forward to watching each
Aw.
broadcast. Thank you,
Thanks,
Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Appreciate everyone hanging out with us in the chat. It's always a lot of fun. A lot of McDonald's talk this episode. Sorry, we had already kind of moved down past McDonald's, and people are like, use the app. That's a whole nother interesting conversation. The app does have some good deals.
I know,
if
now I'm
you guys
getting
are McDonald's
hungry.
people. But yeah, we're making Josh angry now. But thank you for joining. If you want to join us Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube, help the program, email us with questions or ask Josh for the next episode. Loopcast@catholicvote.org is where you can do that. You can also donate, become a champion. You can do that at catholicvote.org/champions. Do that at that link right there. Gosh, I'm struggling again with the CTA. But also helpful reviews, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, leave us 5 stars. Thank you for all of those. Thank you to everyone who's already champion. Only way we can do what we do right now. And we have a book too. We haven't plugged the book in a little while. The book is officially available if you want to go grab that for God, Country, and Sanity. We have 2 featured authors on this podcast. So if you want to check that one out, let us know how it is. Please do. You can go grab that at our website as well, catholicvote.org. But you can pray for us. It's most important. We're praying for you. I actually was praying for everyone. I was in D.C. on Monday, and I was in St. Matthew's,
Beautiful,
which is
beautiful church.
is a breathtaking church. Just crazy, beautiful. I guess JFK's funeral was in there.
Yeah.
Another interesting fact, but man, that was a pretty church. So I literally was just sitting down right after recording on Monday, just popped in, said a prayer for everyone. We do think about you guys. A lot to pray for. Pray for our country, pray for us. So St. Fidelis, St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.